Hello guys, it's Crystal Briefs, and in this video I want to discuss attack and HP stats. So attack stats increases damage your troops are doing to the opponent. HP stats increases HP of your troops so that your troops die slower. I think most of you have heard of someone saying attack stat is better than HP stat. Someone even says attack stat is 3 times better than the HP stat. But I'm here to say that those are simply wrong. They probably just did a camp testing on only one condition and drew an extremely narrow conclusion from that. The reality is that the importance of each stat is highly dependent on a scenario. There are many situations that favors HP and likewise for the attack stat. The importance of stat is relative and there is really no absolute standard from which you can conclude that either stat is better than the other one. So it's basically nonsense to say which is better than which apart from defense stat. The effective defense stat is very small in pretty much all situations compared to HP or attack stats. So I'm going to explain to you what kind of situations favors HP or attack stat. So I did a camp testing, and before I get into the results, let me explain to you that camp testing does not accurately reflect battle in a castle because there's no wall and the distance between your troops and the opponent troops is different. But it's still accurate enough to observe the effective stats. So I tested 3 conditions, and this is the first one. So the attacker, which is my main account, uses full T1 ranged in 1000th scale with 2375 troops compared to an actual rally. My main account is full champ, and the defender, which is my alt, and much weaker, uses 5000 T4 cav. So the attacker is countering the defender. And note that both sides have no familiars because familiars can make the results much more complicated. And here's the results. I increased 50% of each stat individually from the reference, and the defender is taking huge losses in all cases, as you can see, whereas the attacker is not at all. And here you have to always include a reference when you want to compare among stats because we are testing how changing the stat will affect the result with regard to one reference battle report. So any argument on the comparison among stats has no meaning whatsoever without a reference battle report. Also, we are taking the difference in casualties as margin between the attacker and the defender because that will reflect the change in the casualties in both directions. It reflects not just the increase in the defender's casualties, but also you're taking into account decreasing losses on attacker's side. In this case, the 50% attack improved the result by 91, while HP improved just by 19. So in this case, we can say that attack is 4 to 5 times more effective than HP. The results from the second condition might surprise you. In this one, the defender is defending in mixed comp but still getting countered in cav phalanx. And here's the results. The battle is pretty close in this case, the attacker is still winning but taking quite a huge toll. And surprisingly, HP became slightly better than attack. To explain this, we need a little bit of maths which enables us to roughly predict how the casualties will be affected by changing the stats, but it might be somewhat complicated for those whose strength is not in mathematics. So I might make another video to explain this in detail. But basically the important thing is that in this case HP do slightly better than attack stat because the attacker has quite a lot of casualties. The more casualties you have, the more effect you'll see from increasing HP, and at some point HP takes over attack, and that point is generally when you start to lose the battle or start to have more casualties than the opponent. Also, it's important to remember that the slower the troops die, the more troops survive to attack the opponent, so HP can cause more damage to the opponent. The opposite is also true for the attack, but attack tends to have less effect on reducing damage from the enemy, and this can also be mathematically explained, but that's another story. So if you remember the first condition, the attacker had much less casualties than the defender. So the effect of HP stat was relatively small, but that wasn't the case for the second condition. The HP stat had larger effect, and I believe now you broadly understand why. Now let's go to the third condition. So in this one, the defender is still in mixed comp, but changed to in phalanx. so that the attacker becomes the one being countered. So as you can see, as you can probably expect, the casualties for the attacker is much bigger compared to the defender. And as you can probably guess, the effect of HP becomes much bigger than attack stat. In fact, HP stat is about 4 times more effective than attack stat in this case. Surprised? At this point, it becomes quite stupid to say something like attack stat is better than HP stat, isn't it? So let's summarize. Effectiveness of attack or HP stats is extremely variable. There's no single answer to the question which stat is better in this game. It just cannot exist. You have to think about which stat is better with respect to one specific battle report, and you can't apply the same conclusion to other battles. Next, if you have more casualties than the opponent, you generally benefit more from increasing HP. It's generally. And if you have less casualties than the opponent, chances are you get better results by increasing attack stat. But even this, although it's already become quite complicated, it's a bold oversimplification. At the beginning, I've told you that I didn't include the familiars in the test because it makes the result complicated. Familiars are really pain in the neck if you are trying to figure out which stat is better. Also, there's heroes and other factors such as counter boost, debuffs, formations, troop comps, etc. that can make this topic such a mess to talk about. Moreover, different purposes can attach different values to each stat. If you don't care about your losses and just want more kills, focusing on attack stat might be your taste. If you want a walk back in a rally, focusing on HP might be more favorable. If you're a rally trap and want to trap titans, then HP might be the way to go. As you can see, this topic gets surprisingly intricate and confusing. But what I can say from all this is that if you want to be able to achieve the best result in any kind of situation, you'd want to value both attack and HP stats equally. So now that you have a broad understanding of what kind of situation favors HP or attack stat, let's do some exercises. So in this part, I'll show you a couple of battle reports, and I want you to hypothesize which stat will more effectively improve the results for the attacker. Once I gave you several seconds to think, I'll move on to the second battle report, and feel free to leave your answers to the comments down below because it's an open question. There's no answer because it's impossible to test with the same condition. So let's get going. The first one is this. I did an inf blast on a solo trap, and which do you think will improve the result, attack or HP stat? Feel free to pause the video and have a quick thought. Then the second one is this. I did a cav blast. Is it attack stat or HP stat that will improve the result? It's a really close shot. Okay, so I think that's the end of this long video, and thank you so much for watching this. And if you'd like to see more enlightening content of this kind, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Bye!